When I retire, I'm going to have a pretty good nest egg saved up. But you know what? I really don't want to touch the principal. I just want to live off the interest. On today's show, we'll discuss why this idea probably won't work.
It's time for the My Retirement Clarity Podcast with Lee Perkins, financial planner and president of J.L. Perkins Wealth Management. Get ready for a good dose of inspiration, simplicity, implementation, and of course, clarity on how to successfully prepare for retirement and grow and preserve your wealth. Here's Ben George with Lee Perkins.
Lee Perkins here. Thank you so much for tuning in to the My Retirement Clarity Podcast. Man, this show continues to grow, and it's all because of folks like you tuning in, so we really do appreciate it. One of the reasons I enjoy doing the podcast is because I get to share real-world experiences from the people that I meet. And so the goal here is to help you learn from some of those things, some of the things that I see in the real world, and to help you make better decisions so that you can have an amazing retirement. So I like today's topic because it's something that comes up almost every week in the office. And so when I meet with somebody for the first time, one of the things I will always ask them is, hey, what is your plan for income in retirement? And the answer that I get most of the time is this. And they say, you know, Lee, I hadn't really given it a ton of thought, but I know I don't want to touch the principal. I just like to live off of the interest. So I'll say, okay, that sounds pretty good, but can you tell me a little bit more about how you plan to do this? And you know, I would say that I've probably never, ever had anybody give me the details on how they plan to do this and how it can work. And so that's why I wanted to devote an entire episode of the podcast to this subject, because I think the phrase live off the interest seems to just be accepted as the norm, but I think there are so many problems with it, and that's what we're going to jump in today. All right, so let's start off with how I think this idea probably came about, and I don't know really when this became a popular sort of saying, but my guess is it's probably a long time ago when we were in a period of very high interest rates, probably similar to what we're going through right now. Interest rates are high right now, and of course institutions and banks want our money, so they're willing to give us a higher amount of interest on our savings and CDs and things like that. So back then, you know, if we go back to maybe the 70s and early 80s, it could have been possible that you could have lived on just the interest. And so when you think back to that period of time in the 70s, people always reflect on, you know, things that were good back then, and CD rates were, you know, hovering between 5 and 10%. And I think in the early 80s, in 1981, they actually topped out at 18%. And that's pretty crazy to think about. But of course, you know, it wasn't all good back then. The country, of course, had some challenges that for a lot of folks really sort of offset those really great CD rates. So now let's think about the people who were retiring or already retired back then. And chances are that they had a pension and maybe a little bit of savings. And for most people, that savings was probably in their local bank. The 401k didn't start until 1978. And so even for folks who may have retired in the late 70s and possibly the mid 80s, they probably didn't have enough time to accumulate a lot of money in their retirement accounts. And so most of the people's savings were probably in CDs that were paying double-digit interest at the time. So the idea would be, hey, I'll get my pension, I'll get my Social Security, and then on top of that, I'm going to grab some interest off of my CDs. And so technically, somebody could, quote, live on the interest back then and not touch their principal. Sounds like a great plan, right? Well, back then, it probably was a great plan. But then some things started to change. The first change was that company pensions began to go away. And so as new companies opened, they didn't offer a company pension. They opted for this new 401k option for their company retirement plan. And so what they did is they shifted the responsibility of retirement from the company to the individuals. And a lot of companies, of course, offer some type of match. But, for the most part, if you didn't contribute, you probably didn't get the match. As it is today, some people took advantage of it back then. Some people take advantage of it today. And they've taken, they've saved a lot of money in their 401k. But other people have made different choices. And if they didn't contribute when they retired because they didn't have a pension, they didn't have a lot of money saved, and they found themselves with Social Security being the only source of income. So that was the first change, company pensions going away. Hey folks, Lee Perkins here. If you've listened to this podcast for any amount of time, you know how much I hate taxes, and I know you probably do too. Our politicians are completely out of control. Their spending is off the chart, and you've got to be prepared for increasing taxes in the future. So we've written a book called Diffuse, 7 Steps to Protecting Your 401k or IRA from the Ticking Tax Time Bomb. You're going to want to grab a copy of this book and learn how you can protect yourself. Then you'll have to decide if you want to take action right now, or if you'd rather wait until the IRS changes the rules of the game. Either way, the choice is yours. To get a free copy of the book, just text the word diffuse to 478-475-2050. That's DEFUSE to 478-475-2050. And we'll send you a free copy. Thanks again for listening. Now back to the show. So the next thing that changed was the interest that you could get on a CD or on your savings. So when interest rates leveled out, many years ago, the income that you could get from a CD decreased dramatically. And of course, we went through a period of time a few years ago where banks were paying almost nothing on CDs. And so if your plan was to live on the interest that you got from your CDs, that plan failed. And since you were no longer entitled to a pension, you couldn't get interest from your CDs. You had to then turn to your 401k plan for your income. And so that's kind of where one of the big problems comes into play right now. And so this is where the live off the interest and never touch the principal becomes the default strategy for people, and how it doesn't really pan out. So here's how this happens. Somebody comes into my office, and let's assume, just to make the math easy, they've got $1 million. And they say, Lee, I want to invest my money. I'd like to get, about 6% a year, live on that interest. And so that's going to give me $60,000 of income. We'll add that to both of our Social Securities, and we're going to be pushing $100,000 of income before taxes. We've done the math. Our retirement budget is about $80,000 a year. So after taxes, I think we're going to be in good shape. And so on the surface, this sounds like a pretty good plan. There's only one problem, and it's that little word that they mentioned, and that word is average. They said they want to average 6% to get that $60,000 of income. And that's great. I don't think 6% is an unrealistic return. The problem is you're not going to get 6% every year. You see, this plan that they just sort of rattled off the top of their head is based on a straight line return. 6% this year, 6% next year, 6% the following year, and the year after that. But in the real world, that's not how it works. You know that. The market may be up 6% this year. You can get your $60,000 of income, but then it's down 10% the next year. And then up 5% the next year, and then flat the following year. Then it's up 15% the following year. So in those 4 years that I just made up, there were 2 up years, 1 down year, and 1 flat year. This means that if you were planning to just, quote, live on the interest, in 2 of those years, there was no interest. So if you really didn't want to touch the principal, you couldn't get income from this $1 million. And so this becomes a real problem now, because you said your budget was $80,000 a year. And so your plan was to take $60,000 of interest income off of your 401k or IRA or whatever it is, and then $40,000 of combined Social Security. So if you don't get that $60,000 of interest, you don't have enough money to live on. So It's like I always say, your 401k or IRA can average 6% a year or 8% a year or whatever it is, but there will be years that you don't get any interest. Markets are cyclical. They go up and down. They've done it forever, and they're going to continue to do the same thing going forward. It's what they do. And as you all know, I'm a big fan of the stock market. But if you're invested in a diversified portfolio, which you should be, among a whole bunch of different asset classes, you will never, ever get a straight line return that gives you the same amount of interest every year. So that's why, to me, the whole living off the interest concept, the way that most people say, it's not going to work. And so, to me, this is why income planning needs to be way more of a focus for retirees and pre-retirees. I think we're so conditioned by the financial media to focus on the investment plan that a lot of times we neglect the actual income plan. And I think these two go hand in hand. Are you investing for growth, or are you investing for income? Or is it a combination of the two? It's different for everybody, but I think it's important that you do your homework and make sure you know where your income is going to come from. Remember what I always say, the stock market is one of those variables that we have no control over. And far too many times, I think people want the markets to make up for their lack of savings over their working career. And that's why, we listen to these investment gurus on what I call the financial pornography shows, and we are easily tempted. All we've got to do is invest like this person says, or use this strategy, and then all your problems are going to go away. And of course, if all the problems go away, I don't have to worry about income. But that's not how it works in the real world. And if you don't have a real plan for income and retirement, it's going to be a constant struggle, and you don't want that. So there's a lot of different ways to get income in retirement. Of course, you can use insurance products like annuities or some types of life insurance. You can use dividends, or you can, of course, rely on market appreciation. All of these strategies have their pros and their cons, and the important thing is to develop a strategy that works for you in up markets and in down markets, and not just when there's interest. So the next time you hear somebody say, I just want to live off the interest and not touch the principal, I want you to think about some of the reasons we've talked about on the show today as to why these may not work. And maybe one day in another episode, we'll talk a little bit more about some of the better ways that you can get income in retirement. So hope this was helpful for you. If you don't have a plan for income in retirement, feel free to reach out. You can set up a quick call with me by visiting the website www.talkwithlee.com. I'd love to see how I can help. That's it for today. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time. Lee Perkins here, and I want to thank you so much for tuning into the show today. If you like our podcast, we would be honored if you would share the show with others. And one great way to do that is by posting the show to your social media pages, or by just telling others about it. Either way, we would really appreciate it. And of course, if you do enjoy the show, we would appreciate it if you would give us a 5-star review, and this certainly helps other people like you find our show. And if you want to learn a little more about our firm and how we help people have the best retirement they can possibly have, go check us out at www.myretirementclarity.com. There are a lot of great resources that you can access directly on the website. And of course, if you want to have a conversation with me, you can visit www.talkwithlee.com, and this will take you directly to my calendar. And there you can schedule a 15-minute phone call so I can learn a little bit more about your situation. Of course, everybody is not a great fit for our firm, but if I think we can add value and put you in a better situation, I'll let you know, and we can certainly talk about the next steps. So thanks again for tuning into the show, and we'll catch you next time.
Investment advisory services are offered by J.L. Perkins Wealth Management, a registered investment advisor and insurance agency. Information is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute tax, legal, or investment advice. Always consult with a qualified tax, legal, or investment professional before taking any action.